I will start with Mr. Gert van der Linde. Mr. Gert van der Linde is the Chief Operation Officer, Infrastructure Finance Corporation. In short, is INCA. Mr. Gert, can you please just wave your hand so that the audience is able to see who is Mr. van der Linde? Thanks, Mr. van der Linde. To the audience, can you just show love to Mr. Gert? Can you just show your emojis just to welcome him? Secondly, I would like to introduce Ms. Zinzi Mphahlele. Ms. Zinzi Mphahlele is a manager budget and reporting from Polokwane Municipality. Ms. Mphahlele, can you just wave so that the audience can be able to see you? Can you also show love to Ms. Mphahlele with the emojis? Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and a privilege for me to introduce Mr. Jan Hattingh. Mr. Jan Hattingh is the Chief Director, Local Government Budget Analysis in the National Treasury. Mr. Hattingh, please wave so that the public can see you. Thanks, Mr. Hattingh. Fourth, I'd like to introduce Mr. Yunus Chamda. Mr. Chamda is the coordinator of the Johannesburg Crisis Alliance. As well as he also participates in the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Mr. Yunus, can you please wave? Thank you, sir. Some love also for Mr. Chamda. Thank you very much. And then the last panel member to introduce is Mr. Mohammed Logat. Mr. Logat is a specialist audit audit support from SALGA, South African Local Government Association. Mr. Logat, please wave. Can you also show some love to Mr. Logat? Thank you, everyone, for that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's also a privilege for me to also welcome the panel and thank them for taking the time to be with us in this particular important webinar that we're having today. With that being said, I would like to pause and afford each panel member 2 minutes each, just to give us some reflections in terms of the keynote presentation, or perhaps some in terms of their experiences as it pertains to the theme of today. And in this instance, I will begin with Mr. Jan Hattingh, and then the other panel members are more than welcome to turn off their cameras. I will yield to Mr. Hattingh just to give 2 minutes of his reflections. Thanks, and over to you, Mr. Hattingh.
Thank you, Program Director. Ladies and gentlemen, and the members of civil society, I think we really appreciate the time that you've spent with us and the extensive comments and questions that you've posed to us. So, Chair, I think there are two things that's important that I'm taking from those two or those three inputs. I think, firstly, transparency matter. That's consistent with the constitutional requirements. Secondly, our municipalities are really grappling with collecting their revenue, despite the fact that they've got extensive tax powers, unlike provincial government, and Silo has made that point. Thirdly, you can see from the grant presentation, colleagues, that our municipalities do not necessarily spend the grants productively and in terms of the intended objective or intent as per the Annual Division of Revenue Act. And each and every grant have a grant framework that essentially indicate what is the intent and what that grant is supposed to buy. And I think it's important for the colleagues who are with us to familiarize themselves not only with what we host on our website, but also the Annual Division of Revenue Act. It's a critical redistribution tool that we use to allocate resources from the rich to the poor and therefore compensate those smaller municipalities that do not have an adequate revenue base. The second takeaway, Chair, is I could see that from the responses, there's many of the members and the colleagues that have joined us So I hope that we haven't created the impression that everything is going well. That's certainly not the intention. Our municipalities have massive challenges. So if you read all our reports, and remember we publish the budgets of municipalities once a year, we quarterly publish the financial and conditional grant results, and we do produce these annual the State of Local Government report. And in all those reports, it's very clear that our municipalities are struggling. Now, when we are confronted in Parliament of what is the Treasury doing, I think it's important to understand the constitutional mandate of the National Treasury. And essentially, it's emanating from Section 215 and 2162. So the Treasury sets Treasury norms and standards when it comes to financial management. And the three key pieces of legislation that facilitate that is the Public Finance Management Act, the Municipal Finance Management Act, and then the Annual Division of Revenue Act. Now, the fact that we have a monitoring and oversight responsibility, and we've put in all these measures to track the performance of local government, and remember, this is a long, painful journey. So what we share with you today took essentially a good part of 17 to 20 years to put in place. So we need to get to the point where municipalities use this information properly and productively, both on the administrative side as well as politically. The point that we do make in Parliament, colleagues, is that National Treasury do not manage a municipality. Myself and my team, we are not responsible for the decisions. So when it comes to accountability, it starts and stops with the council. That's how the legislative framework and the Constitution has been designed. So we have a monitoring and oversight responsibility, and the Section 71 report and that slide that Manla showed on the early warning system, all of that is critical tools to make sure that if we spot that there's a challenge, that something gets done immediately. So I think from accountability perspective, it's important to understand the roles and the responsibilities. Obviously, we work very closely with provincial treasuries. As a treasury, we oversee the work of provincial treasuries and provide strategic direction and support. So, Chair, my takeaway is that I think there's no doubt that we have challenges, and somebody have posted the white paper that COCTA is overseeing to review the system of local government. I think it's a critical initiative that the public should follow. So, Chair, let me stop there. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, thanks. Thank you very much, Mr. Hattingh. And thank you for highlighting I think in the main, for highlighting the takeaways from today's theme. And also thank you for highlighting the guiding authority, which is the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, because one of the comments was that perhaps if the National Treasury can take away, I'm paraphrasing, if the National Treasury can take away the equitable share, municipalities will start to perform. But I'm glad that we have highlighted that you are working from the guiding authority, which is the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, in terms of the division of revenue. But without necessarily responding on behalf of the panel, I'm just highlighting some of the things that you are touching on. And also thank you for giving us a balanced view in terms of the wins as well as the shortcomings as it pertains to local government. And also thank you for sharing some of the work that the National Treasury is doing with regards to some of the work that Nature is undertaking with regards to local government. So thanks for those reflections. Now, without any waste of time, I will want to stop and give the opportunity to Ms. Mphahlele to give us her reflections, as well as some of the experiences, perhaps, as someone who is actually on the ground. Ms. Mphahlele is from one of the municipalities in Limpopo, the Polokwane Municipality. So she knows someone on the ground, perhaps to give us a certain, from another perspective as it pertains to the theme of today. Let me yield over to you, Ms. Mphahlele. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you all for for joining us. Sorry for that. I wanted to start with something called the 12-front analogy to help each and every one of you to interact with the Section 71 report. So imagine our municipal council has approved an annual budget of 12 rand. Treasury expects 1 rand, sorry for that, 1 rand per month to flow through our books in a healthy way, no more and no less. So we are expected to bill 1 rand, collect 1 rand, spend 1 rand. So Section 71 tells us line by line whether we are actually doing those things. So how is this 1 rand tracked monthly in the Section 71 report? Number 1, on the billing, Section 71 shows us how much we've invoiced for services each month. Are we reaching the 1 rand target in billing? Are billing estimates accurate? Are we including everyone who receives services? If we bill less than 1 rand, that gap becomes lost revenue. Our services are going to be underfunded. And why does that matter? If residents and businesses don't receive proper bills, they don't pay, then our 1 rand is going to collapse. Therefore, billing under performance on the Section 71 is a citizen accountability trigger. Number 2, collecting the 1 rand. Section 71 tells us whether cash is actually flowing in. Did we collect the full 1 rand? How much is sitting as outstanding debt? Because if there is poor collection, there is cash shortages and there's liquidity risk and therefore service disruption. If we only collect 60 cents of the 1 rand, we will not be able to maintain services. And Treasury sees that immediately on the Section 71 report. Number 3, spending the 1 rand. Section 71 shows whether overspending the 1 rand, because that is going to cause budget pressure, late payment, no reserves, resulting in a deficit risk. Or underspending the 1 rand, it means there'll be service delivery delays. Remember, with grant spending, the mentality is that either you use it or you lose it. If you don't spend the grant part of the 1 rand, the report is going to flag it. So grant performance is not just a line item, it's a red flag. It tells Treasury that this municipality is not ready to deliver, and Treasury is going to take back the money. And if we lose the grant money, we lose infrastructure and future funding. So the Section 71 report is our 1 rand dashboard. Every month it answers, did we spend 1 rand properly? Did we bill the 1 rand in full? Did we collect the 1 rand in cash? Did we use our grants on time? If one of the answers to those questions is no, then we know something is wrong and citizens have the right to ask why, because the end result will be poor service delivery and frustrated communities. So the end goal in the 12-front analogy is not just about maths, it's a financial discipline and a service delivery, because behind every 1 rand in the Section 71 is a tap that must run, a road that must be built, a light that must stay on, and a promise that must be kept. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mphahlele, for that 12-rand analogy. God willing, in case Mr. Hattingh decide to call me for an interview in the future, I'm going to use this 12-rand analogy just to make sense of the whatever question that was going to be asked as it pertains to local government budget analysis on a lighter note. Thanks for that input. Without any further ado, let me yield to, I think we'll give all the love and emojis as we go. Please keep them as we go, but maybe after the last panel member, I'd like to invite everybody just to show love to all the panelists. But please do so if you feel like doing it. But without further ado, I will pause and maybe yield to Mr. Gert van der Linde just to give us some of his reflections. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Program Director. Good morning to all. Just to confirm, you can hear me well, Program Director?
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, my appreciation to National Treasury and all the collaborators that have put this webinar together. I have previously, when I lectured at University of Pretoria, I had a colleague, Professor Bertie Lutz. He was quite involved with the initial reforms that was implemented early 90s within the Office of the Auditor General. And he had a saying that said, information is the currency of accountability. And to to a large extent, this is what this seminar and webinar is all about. Now, the importance of our Section 71 reporting cannot be overemphasized. From my perspective, it has become a critical public good that, if well used, can facilitate fiscal discipline, strategic allocation of resources, and monitoring and oversight. One question that however comes to mind, and I see many of the people in the chat has also raised this, is why are most of our municipalities in such a bad shape at this time? Now, was the available information not well used to prevent this situation from happening, or are there other factors at play? And I think this is worth probably exploring in another webinar as to what can be done to make better use of the information to prevent these situations that we currently see in our municipalities from happening. Then there's also two important additional elements that I think needs to be thought of when the monitoring when we are monitoring the financial health of our municipalities. The first one is the need for a user-friendly graphical dashboard of trends in key metrics of socioeconomic developments in each municipality, service delivery developments, financial performance, and the financial position of the municipality. So a very kind of succinct and user-friendly dashboard as to what is changing in this municipality over the last, let's say, 5 years or so. And then secondly, what are the current plans, the financial plan over the longer term for turning the financial performance and the position of the municipality around? What are they planning to implement? What has been approved? Right, for example, if you look at the point that Mphahlele raised about collection rates, what is being done, what will be done to turn those collection rate graphic or metrics around from a very low level to a higher level that will help the financial sustainability of the municipality? So those longer term plans are critically important, and it shouldn't be a long report. It should be really just a very succinct key metric graphical presentation as to what is the plan for the future to establish a baseline against which they can be measured in terms of the implementation of those plans. Our entries are good, but the longer term impacts of the current decline in service delivery, infrastructure and finances, we must inform the public as to what needs to be done to arrest the situation and to turn it around, and what will be the financial impacts over the longer term. As I said, not in lengthy reports, just a few key metrics presented graphically that would further complement monitoring and oversight and also ultimately accountability. Thanks, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gert van der Linde, for that, with those reflections, and thank you very much for answering one of the questions as to whether Section 71 is it actually an early warning tool per se. But in terms of your reflections, thank you very much. We have partly touched on it, and we do agree that in essence, information is the currency of accountability, as it was presented by the by the colleagues earlier in terms of the earlier inputs. Thank you for your input, and without further ado, let me yield to Mr. Mohammed Logat, just to give us some of his reflections or experiences in this regard. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Yes, yeah, from my side, I think thank you for this opportunity as well, and thank you to National Treasury and to the other role players to put this together as well. I think for me, I think one of the very important things is that I think accountability rests both with the municipalities, as well as there's an accountability element that rests with the citizens and the communities as well. And I want to maybe just maybe look at it from the prism of, let's look at it from the prism of rights and obligations. From the municipality side, the municipality has certain rights that they can do certain things, but they've also got certain obligations. And from the community side, there are certain rights and certain obligations as well. And if I just touch on maybe 2 or 3 of these. So from a municipality side, they have the right to bill for the services that they do provide. They have the right to bill for rates and taxes. They also have the right to apply credit control when it's necessary to apply credit control as well. They've also got the right to utilize the approved funded budgets in terms of the approved targets that they need to basically try and achieve as well. On the counter side, in terms of their obligations is obviously they've got to provide basic services in terms of their mandate. They've got to engage citizens and communities on an ongoing basis in a fair manner. And they've got to also manage the financial resources adequately and appropriately and with the proper governance attached to it as well. Now, if we move on to the other side, from the citizen's perspective, just to try and make this thing as practical as possible, citizens also have certain rights and obligations. And from their rights, I think the rights that they have as citizens, if they have the right to basically receive the basic services that they have been promised in terms of the Constitution, they have the right to basically be engaged and give inputs, and the inputs needs to be basically taken into account by the municipalities. They've also got the right to protest, but to obviously protest in a peaceful manner when there is a need for that as well. But on the side of the citizens, there's also certain obligations that the legislation places on them as well. So one of the obligations that they have is to basically to pay for their services, obviously as long as the billing is appropriate, etc., to pay for their services and pay for it on time, in terms of what the services that the municipality is providing. Also, they have a right, or they have an obligation, obviously, sorry, that if a citizen status has changed and if they cannot afford to pay for these services, they have the obligation to inform the municipality that they would need to basically apply to be taken now out as a normal paying customer and to be maybe classified as an indigent. So they basically can get the status changed as well. And they've also got an obligation, obviously, when they are protesting, not to damage or destroy any public property or municipal property as well. So for me, I think trying to match the reports we have, the accountability mechanisms and structures that we have in terms of Section 71 reporting, as well as the budget monitoring, etc. I'm trying to bring it down to basically say that these things talk to certain rights and obligations, both of the municipality and of the citizenry. And I think both sides need to basically play their part. And for me, I think I like the overall thing that we had, in terms of our logo, from your pocket to public services. And we also have the last part over there, which talks about a partnership. And I think we've got to view this as a partnership, because at the end of the day, if we all work together and if we hold each other accountable, then we can be able to actually improve in terms of the service delivery, the financial management, and the governance in local government. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Logat. Indeed, we all must hold each other accountable, and everyone has a role to play. That's an input from Mr. Logat to indicate that accountability rests with the local government as much as it rests with the rest of us as the members of the public. In that, as much as we do have our rights to services, we also have the rights goes with the responsibilities to pay for the services. I'm also paraphrasing, not necessarily want to repeat what he said. But with that, let's go to our last panel member, Mr. Yunus Chamda, just perhaps to give us some reflections before we can see how much time we have to fill some of the comments and questions from the chat box. Thanks. Over to you, Mr. Chamda.
Thank you very much, and greetings, everybody. And well, firstly, thank you to the organizers for including a civil society organization in this webinar. I think from the very beginning of this webinar, we've heard lots of references to the role of civil society and the partnership that is needed with civil society. And I just want to say that it would be very good to know what the experience of civil society organizations are when they try and interface with government. And our experience has been that, as long as you participate and you are able to fulfill the participation role, then the engagement is rather comfortable. But the minute you, as a civil society organization, start talking about accountability and transparency, and once you try and hold government to account or you ask for increased transparency, that's when the relationship starts becoming strained and very difficult. And I think that the Open Government Partnership, particularly in the program that we are in, should survey this to really check what the experience of civil society has been in their interface with government. I think that citizens get their information about their municipality in different ways. And it's important to look at what are the most used sources of information and what are also the most trusted sources of information. But I think that the highest trust factor and the most used source of information for every citizen is what they see and experience with their own eyes and through their own lives in their communities. And no amount of reporting is going to change that And there has to be a correlation between what we report and how citizens experience their municipalities. So I think we must close that gap as much as we can. Of course, social media has a great influence on how citizens know and understand their municipalities, as does conversations through word of mouth. And of course, the mass media has a huge influence on this. What is also important is that citizens can access information and know and understand their municipalities by what is available online. And I think a lot has been said about that today, and that's all very commendable. But I think we must appreciate that, not everybody serves the web the way we sometimes enjoy doing because we are active in this space. But I think that civil society organizations like ourselves have a huge responsibility and has to do lots more to be able to improve the interface. So, what could we do much better, particularly with regard to Section 71 reports? Firstly, I think that we have a responsibility to improve budget literacy among citizens and to improve access and, to make all the financial data. I mean, we saw tons and tons of tables and spreadsheets, and that's very important and very useful for those who work in that space. But I think for citizens to try and make it understandable and simple, is very important. And in this regard, I mean, we must complement municipal money as a very good example of how you can make information easily understandable. I mean, the infographics are just wonderful and very useful. So, I think that Section 71 reports, perhaps if they are presented in that way with then levels of data which you can click on and get all the hardcore data, would be very useful. We must improve public participation and improve on inclusivity. And lastly, I think we really have to strengthen accountability so that these Section 71 reports, if they show changing trends, civil society must be able to hold government to account for how those trends are moving. And in return, there will be an appreciation of what role citizens have to play to try and ensure that a municipality remains healthy. And in that case, you would get to the obligations of payment of services, the protection of infrastructure, and the rest of it. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chamda, for those inputs. And yes, indeed, as the public, we must leverage on the available platforms to participate and meaningfully engage local government to make sure that we shape it to be what we ought to be or what we want to see to be. And through social media, mass media, and using the available portals that are provided by National Treasury and other government agencies and departments, we should be able to access information and able to empower ourselves to make use of that information to enable accountability. But most importantly, I think my takeaway from the input is that it's also important that we use that available information to enable active citizenry as the public. Thank you for those inputs. Now, can we give love to all the panel in terms of their reflections and experiences? Can I ask that we give them some love using our emojis just to show appreciation in terms of their reflections? Now, I think it's the time for Q&As, but I'm glad that most of the questions, the team behind the scenes was hard at work trying to respond to most of the questions that were raised and comments that were put or posted by the audience. But because just to leverage on the 10 minutes that is remaining as pertains to Q&A to the panel, the first one probably maybe I will want to direct it to Mr. Hattingh so that we are able to, he's the one that spoke first, so that let's go the same way. Maybe we'll have enough time to give each panel member one of the comments or questions, maybe just to respond to. I think one that I will want to send to Mr. Hattingh is that there was a comment that was raised earlier by, I think we can't recall, there was it's just an advice, Mr. Hattingh, that the maybe in essence the audience, the participant is asking for the advice. I think let me just get to the question. I think this one, yeah, maybe Well, just one question that I think perhaps maybe advice to say, yeah, I think because I wanted to be verbatim, I didn't want to paraphrase this one. Apologies for that. Where Mr. Hattingh, a practical advice to ordinary citizens, because now we are engaging the citizens. Maybe this one, if you can just give an advice. The question says, or comment says, practical advice to ordinary citizens to address and report local government irregularities. So the participant here is saying, what practical advice can you give to them to enable them to report local government financial irregularities? I'm not sure if it makes sense, Mr. Hattingh. Let me yield to you.
Thanks, Program Director. Thanks for the question. There's a number of options in this regard. So firstly, the information can be reported obviously to the National Treasury or the Provincial Treasury. It can be reported to the Office of the Auditor General. It can be reported to the Public Protector. So what we normally advise, if there's something like that, or something that you anticipate or suspect that there's behavior that's not in line with legislation, you're welcome to send it to the National Treasury. We have the MFMA helpline. So if you go to the MFMA website, you will see the MFMA helpline. So I'm saying there's a number of options, but feel free to bring it to our attention. And in some cases, we have also advised colleagues that they can report right to the Minister of Finance or to the Minister of Kokta, or both of them, to bring it to their attention. And then we have an obligation in terms of legislation to investigate. We sometimes initiate the investigations. Sometimes the municipality must initiate the investigation. But if you do observe any of those, feel free to share that with us. Thanks to Program Director.
Thank you, Mr. Hattingh, for that advice. And thanks. I think, yeah, just give some love and emojis from the audience in terms of that advice. I think it's a useful advice and very valuable to all of us in terms of, well, how can we actively activate that active citizenry as the public. Now I would like to move over to Ms. Mphahlele. Ms. Mphahlele, as someone that is at the municipality who is implementing, there's a question that says many municipalities stay in financial distress, as Mandla, I think, as well as Ms. Nselo's presentation indicated, and in particular that grants are returned. So the question is, from your side, being on the other side, what do you think National Treasury and the provincial treasuries can proactively and actively assist municipalities not to find themselves in financial distress, or maybe minimize the impact, minimize the likelihood of being in financial distress? I'm paraphrasing, as well as ensure that all the conditional grants are spent, because in the main, the conditional grants are the ones that are returned back to the fiscus. Ms. Mphahlele, I'm not sure if it makes sense. Can I yield to just to give comments in terms of that?
Thank you so much. So the majority of municipalities that are struggling with spending, especially on your capital and conditional grants, is mostly poor planning. If we were to look at the consolidated report that we get from the Auditor General, where you find that projects preparation is not necessarily ready when funds are received. And there's also a lot of delays in terms of the supply chain management processes. It's a bit low, it's slow, there's a whole lot of challenges. Then sometimes the other reason that is cited, because now I'm gonna have to speak on an overall point of view, is that internal capacity is also lacking. So there's a lack of engineers, PMU staff, and procurement offices. And in some instances, there might be a possibility of late transfers where you find that we get a grants in the last quarter, limiting implementation time. And then the biggest thing is the political instability, the frequent leadership changes that will derail service delivery. But in terms of the support that we do get from the provincial treasury and the national treasury, they do analyze our Section 71 reports and Section 52 reports on time. Also, in terms of the submission of the budgets that we send, they do give assurance to our council that those budgets are funded. So as they also detect the early warning flags, the provincial treasury and the national treasury are quick to alert council and those charged with governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mphahlele, for that input. I really appreciate. Let's just give some love to the response, the emoji, please. Now let me move over to Mr. Hart. Mr. Hart, there's a question here that says we need stronger instruments to hold officials to community needs in terms of the IDP development and the implementation of projects within the IDP. The question says, what can be done to increase civil society influence beside protest? So what is it that can be done other than just going to the streets and maybe destroying the very limited infrastructure that we have? So the questions around the instruments that could be used to hold the municipalities accountable in terms of the IDP that have been development, in terms of being in terms of implementation. I'm not sure if I'm making sense to you, or should I paraphrase?
No, it's fine. I think
thanks,
two things. Yes, from my perspective, I think the effectiveness of upstream budget consultation needs to be looked at, the effectiveness of that particular process. I don't necessarily think that it yields what conceptually was designed for it. And maybe that's one area where the engagement upstream in terms of the budget and the priorities in the budget and all of those things are consulted with communities should be looked at from a point of view of effectiveness. And then secondly, I think something that is largely missing, obviously during the year in terms of implementation, the effectiveness of use of the available information is something that I think is of big concern from a point of view of those that have been consulted in our communities and civil society organizations and even business. So again, there's I think a gap there. And then at year end, we seem to be able then to be passing the buck, so to speak, from a civil society accountability point of view to the Auditor General and Parliament. And again, I think downstream after implementation, consultation on the results of the municipalities in terms of performance of implementation of the budget and also the financial performance and position of the municipality and what needs to change going forward is something that is missing. A consultative process in that regard, I think, would absolutely do wonders. From our perspective, we have found that when we engage with municipalities to help them to understand where they are, what the constraints are and what the issues are and how to overcome that, a consultation on that plan, which is a long-term financial plan, with, for example, the Chamber of Business and some civil society organizations have done wonders to help improve the relationship between the municipality and their clients. So I think those are three points that I would focus on.
Thank you, Mr. Hart, for those 3 points. I think they're very valuable, and thanks for that. Now, I'd like to move over to Mr. Can you give some love as well to Mr. Hart in terms of his response, please? Thank you so much. Now, let me move to Mr. Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed, based on the Auditor General reporting, the National Treasury State of Local Government Finances, the in-year reporting, as you have indicated, as presented by Mandla and Sello, most of the municipalities are in a bad state and majority of the municipalities are in a brink of collapse. So the question is, what tangible action plan can be put in place to assist struggling municipalities to provide basic services and improve financial health and as well as sustainability? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Program Director. That's quite a challenging question, but I think let me give you from our perspective, or my personal perspective as well, dealing with local government for a number of years. So I think the issue is municipalities have to start from the beginning. So obviously the budgets that they have, or the budgets that they basically table, need to be funded. I think that's the first. So obviously if you start on that footing, you're at least on a sound footing. The challenge we've picked up, a number of municipalities are now passing unfunded budgets. So from the outset, you're sitting on basically like on a negative base, if you want to put it that way. And obviously moving from that premise, somewhere along the line, within the 12 months of the year, money is going to run out, whether you like it or not. And I think that's the one aspect. So you've got to make sure that your budget is funded. I think coupled with that, obviously, is then to keep diligently monitoring in terms of what you set out in terms of revenue targets, revenue collections. I think the colleague who talked about the 12 Rand example, it's a very practical example, but obviously in practice, the discipline needs to be basically put in place there. So if you may have to summarize it into certain things, I think there needs to be a culture. The culture basically needs to inculcate good governance. There needs to be also a culture of discipline from an accounting perspective and a governance perspective, and also from a reporting perspective. So municipalities need to make sure that what they're supposed to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, basis in terms of reporting, processing, needs to happen. And I think the other very important thing is then to also ensure that as the funds are being spent, I know there's this big focus regarding also on the conditional grants regarding the level of spending, especially on infrastructure, etc. And obviously, if you don't spend, then the money has to be returned. But I think the other important element is what are you spending on, and actually, are you spending it appropriately as well? So a good example would be if a municipality had a certain project, for example, to build, for example, a water plant or a sewage plant, and if for whatever reason, if the sewage plant or water plant that was being put up was going to cost, for example, 100 million rands, and come the end of the financial year, the 100 million has been spent, but only 50% of the plant is actually up and running. You can actually see the money was spent, but was it spent appropriately? I don't think so, because obviously you spend the money, but you haven't got the plant that you're supposed to have got for it as well. So I think that's the other important element. I see there's a question on the chat which I want to quickly respond to regarding the funded and unfunded budget. So basically, a funded budget basically means that whatever you've set out in terms of your spending priorities, there is sufficient revenue, realistic sufficient revenue that could be collected to be able to cover that spending. That's basically what a funded budget is. Unfunded budget obviously is you basically indicate that your spending is going to be at a certain level, and unfortunately the revenue that you're going to be putting through is not going to be sufficient to cover the funding, to cover the spending. My apologies. And as I said, the important element, and it's not like a trick or a magic wand that needs to be done, but it's just basic practice in terms of financial discipline. You've got to ensure that the revenue you're putting together or you're proposing in terms of the budget is realistically collectible revenue as well. And obviously your spending needs to align to what you put in terms of the revenue. I think let me leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for that input. I think it's very valuable. And let's give some love to Mohammed. Now, maybe the last question that I would like to field to Mr. Yunus. Maybe let me just take this one from the chat. As someone that is coming from civil society organization, the question is, what are your roles as the civil society organization, as someone that is coming from the Joburg Crisis Alliance? The first part of the question, what is your role and how are you funded to be able to be functional? It's a question coming from Debucho. Let me yield to you, Mr. Chamda.
Thank you very much for the question. So the role of civil society, I mean, it's quite broad, but mainly we focus on mobilizing civil society or communities, bringing them together, using that that opportunity once you have them on a platform to be able to educate, to share information, to share across different neighborhoods what people are doing to improve their own neighborhoods, etc. And then, of course, to have some sort of mechanism to engage with government. And so civil society organizations will continuously try and build some sort of engagement relationships with different levels of government. Funding is the big issue. I mean, funding is extremely scarce, and civil society organizations are literally there on their own and have to fend for themselves. South Africa is not a country that does very well in terms of funding oversight by its own citizenry. I mean, there are some countries in the world, particularly the Scandinavian countries, that do extremely well, and they are able to fund civil society organizations to be independent and to be able to still play oversight over themselves. So you do struggle for funds. We've had to the usual sources of funding for civil society organizations are various foundations, donor funding, etc. And this is what civil society relies on, and to be able to sometimes mobilize funding from the private sector and from business.